And we are live. Happy Friday, all. Happy Fun Friday. Welcome, welcome, welcome to a fantastic, I hope, sit on the couch with Dr. Triphi and my guest. My very special guest is Dr. Thomson Fontaine from Dominica. You're going to learn more about him. One of my biggest and highest intentions for this conversation is to learn more about who Dr. Fontaine is. And as the young people are saying today, what is he bringing to the table? What is he bringing to the table? So, a lot of you know me. I'm Dr. Triphi. I'm a psychologist in Atlanta, Georgia, but I speak the way I do with that little accent to you, because yours is an accent to me. I speak the way I do because I was born on the Caribbean island of Dominica, not to be confused with the Dominican Republic. We love them, but they're a completely different country. Dominica is between Guadeloupe and Martinique. So that means we're further south in that little chain of islands. And the DR, which we get confused with a lot, is up there close to Haiti, Puerto Rico, Cuba. All right. So, y'all, I work with people who are rehabilitating themselves as a psychologist. And recently I started an additional assignment. And the new unit manager, when I came on board, I do telepsych like this. I work via the computer sometimes. She said, I had to Google you to see who was coming in, who we were going to be talking to. And you're Googleable, honey. We had a good laugh about it. So what I decided I would do was to Google Dr. Fontaine. To Google Dr. Fontaine, and here's some of what I found, okay? Dr. Thomson Fontaine holds a PhD in economics, and according to his LinkedIn page, if you're not on LinkedIn, you better get your professional profile up on LinkedIn. He's an international consultant, an economist at a consulting group, and he was also a former International Monetary Fund, the IMF, economist. So over the past 20 years or so, he's developed a wealth of relevant experience in global economics and development issues. And, when we talk about economics, we're talking about money, yeah? Including financial research. And so his vast experience is coupled with academic training and research on current economic trends related to growth, related to currency crises in different countries, development, and fiscal and debt issues. And he's also served as an adjunct associate professor. He's taught at the University of Maryland and lectured at Clemson University. So that's a lot, y'all. That's a lot. That's a mouthful. Yeah. And I am ready to welcome Dr. Fontaine in to hear him tell us himself more about who he is from his mouth. Welcome, Dr. Fontaine.
Yes, a very good morning to you and compliments of the season. It's great. It's great to be here with you this morning.
Thank you.
It's my pleasure indeed.
Yes, sir. I'm very happy you said yes. I know you're busy. You've been particularly busy the last couple of weeks. You are now past that phase. So what's been happening the past couple of weeks that kept you so busy?
Well, in the past couple of weeks, we've had to deal with a party delegates conference end of year. But outside of that, I was also just finishing off in South Sudan and was doing that as well. Then transitioned back into Dominica, dealt with this, and then Christmas was on us, and here we are.
Well, congratulations, because when you talk about that delegates conference, how often does your party hold this delegates conference for leadership?
Well, it's done every year. We have a delegates conference every year. Not every year we vote for a leader. It just happens that we've done it for the past 3 years, and I've been elected each time. So 3 years in a row, we've done it, and I've been elected each time.
Well, very nice. Congratulations are in order. That says a lot. That says, as an outsider looking in, that says to me that the people who perhaps know you better than I do, and I'm hoping that I get to know you a little better today. They're saying yes to you once, twice, three times as their leader. So, congratulations.
Yes, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And as you said, I think it's a vote of confidence that has been placed in me by the delegates, the persons who are actually charged with that responsibility. And I feel
Mm-hmm.
honored that I can always, rise to that occasion, and hopefully I'll be able to satisfy those who place their trust in me.
Okay, okay. You also mentioned South Sudan. So tell us a little bit more about South Sudan. What is your connection to South Sudan?
Yeah, well, so in I left the IMF in 2014 to take part in the elections here in Dominica.
Mm-hmm.
And I started my own consultancy business. And so between 2014, I contested the elections, did not fare too well. Well, I was supposed to have won the night of the election, and I lost the next day in the recount.
Oh, really?
And yes, lost eventually by 3 votes.
Mm.
And I so that was in 2014. So between 2014 and 2016, 2017, I was
Mm-hmm.
appointed a senator. So I was a senator, but in doing my own private work, I was doing a lot of
Mm-hmm.
consulting for the UN, for the European Union. And I did a lot because of my experience in Africa, working at the
Mm-hmm.
IMF, I got a lot of consulting gigs in Africa for the EU. But then I got a call up from the United Kingdom, from the UK
Mm-hmm.
government. They were sponsoring the peace process in South Sudan,
Okay.
and wanted to know if I'd be interested in that opportunity uh,
Mm-hmm.
to go in there as the economic advisor initially, which I accepted because at that time in 2017 it was supposed to have been for a period of just basically 3 months,
Mm-hmm.
because that was 2017, and the peace agreement that was signed in South Sudan in 2015 was coming to an end in 2018. But
Mm-hmm.
elections were to be held basically after, with 1 year still left to go, elections were to be held. So that would have been sometime in 2017. So
Okay.
when I initially went to South Sudan, it was like my other assignment, short term, and so it was supposed to have been for 3 months. But something very interesting happened during that time. The In April of 2017, the organization that I was attached to, which is the one that oversees the peace agreement, at the time it
Mm-hmm.
was headed by the former president of Botswana, Festus Mogae,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a very high level organization because in a way it sits slightly above the government, because the government reports to it in the
Right.
execution of the peace agreement. Yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
I initially went there, and we started a process to revitalize the peace agreement, because it was felt then in 2017 that the peace agreement was not realizing its goal, because it was signed in 2015, but then
Mm-hmm.
there was a conflict in South Sudan in 2016
Okay.
that led to a lot of disruptions.
Conflict as in military.
Yeah, yes, a civil war. The civil war
Mm-hmm.
broke out again,
Mm-hmm.
because there was one also in 2014. So
Mm-hmm.
there was another civil war, and the vice president at the time had actually left the country, and he was in exile in South Africa.
Mm-hmm.
So at that time in 2017, the organization, which is called the Joint Monitoring and Evaluation Commission, decided that it would be best to restart the peace agreement, to
Mm-hmm.
revitalize it, in order to get the vice president who heads the major opposition party in South Sudan, to get him back into the country,
Mm.
because it just felt that without his involvement, the country could not really move forward, because
Okay.
he's the head of the party of, for those who know South Sudan, it has 63 different tribes, but there are
Okay.
two dominant tribes: the Dinka tribe, which is
Mm-hmm.
headed, which at that time, the party that represents the Dinkas is the South Sudan Liberation Movement, that is headed by the
Mm-hmm.
President Salva Kiir, and his vice president headed the second largest tribe, which is the Nuer. tribe.
Mm-hmm.
So those two are the dominant tribes in South Sudan. So it just felt that
Mm-hmm.
if the country was to move forward, he would need to come back. So at that time, we started the process in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, to
Mm-hmm.
bring all of the warring parties together. Because,
Mm.
as I said, there was a civil war that started in 2016. The country
Right.
was in turmoil, and he wanted to bring all of that together. So, my organization, we did what we call a mapping exercise, where we went throughout South Sudan and determined which groups were there, firstly, which were the armed
Mm-hmm.
groups that were there, and
Mm-hmm.
the other political parties that had been formed. And from that mapping exercise, we brought all the key leaders together in Ethiopia to begin the peace talks, and that's how I end up staying in South Sudan, because it had changed now from just a monitoring exercise to actually redoing an entire peace agreement.
Wow.
So that would take, basically, I started in June. So I arrived in South Sudan in April of 2017. We started that in
Mm-hmm.
June of 2017.
And you've been doing that
Basically,
work since.
yes, yes, yes.
Wow.
So it was, and then it took a further year and a half to actually complete the agreement. So that was basically 16 months in Addis, uh,
Mm-hmm.
basically getting this agreement signed. It finally
Mm-hmm.
happened in September of 2018. Then we
Mm-hmm.
moved back to South Sudan to oversee, and that's where I've been ever since.
Well, what I'm hearing from that is clearly, if you went there for 3 months and you ended up being asked to stay for till basically today, I'm hearing that many people thought that you have a certain set of skills to help bring people together, negotiate some really tough relationships. Huh? Uh, I mean, if you're telling me how many tribes you said,
63.
and we're
Yes.
very worried about two tribes in Dominica.
In Dominica. Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, certainly it was part of that. In fact, I think during those negotiations was where I was able to prove my worth, so to speak. And based on that, I was actually promoted to the third
mm,
highest position in that organization,
wow.
as the deputy chief of staff for strategy.
Hmm.
So I was basically responsible for all of the strategy of the organization, how to bring the parties together. In fact, when we completed the negotiations, I was able to bring together the key, because there was like a kind of now a unity government was formed, but in the
A
interim,
unity government was
a
formed.
unity
Okay.
government, yes.
Uh-huh.
But in the interim, a group of 10 individuals were
Hmm.
selected. 10 of the most senior persons from the main parties were selected to kind of do that transition. Okay, the idea was that they would go in for a transition of 8 months, and at the
Uh-huh.
end of the 8 months, the government itself would be formed. So that these were the
Hmm.
most senior people, and one of my tasks was to actually orient them. So we arranged for a an, a seminar in Khartoum at the time,
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
north of Sudan, in Khartoum. I had
Hmm.
this senior, and it was just myself, one other lawyer from the region, and these 10
Yes.
individuals. And
Wow.
my task was to explain to them what was expected of them during that transition period.
Hmm. Hmm.
And based on the agreement that had just been signed, what their tasks and responsibilities were, what the intention was, and what the goal is in terms of bringing this country together. So that to me was one of my most defining moments in my
That's a
in my
big deal.
career,
That's a big
because it
deal.
was, and I mean, all of these individuals now have some of the most powerful positions. You're talking about the Minister of Petroleum, the Cabinet
Right.
Affairs Minister, the Minister
Right.
of Telecommunications, the Minister of Education. Basically,
Mhm.
these 10 individuals now form the key part of the unity government
And how is it
after
going?
doing that transition.
So how is it going now? How's it going now?
All right. So when it was signed in 2018, the idea was to have elections, 3 years, and
Hmm.
then you go into elections, basically have
Hmm.
elections in 2021. All right,
Hmm.
that was 3 years ago.
Hmm.
We were approaching 2021, and a number of things had to be done. Okay, because as you can well understand, that
Hmm.
is a country emerging from conflict, from a
Right.
civil war, that saw the deaths of close to 500,000 people, that saw the displacement of over 6 million individuals. So you
Mm-hmm.
have all of these individuals in camps,
Mm-hmm.
refugee camps
Refugee
in neighboring
camps.
countries, in Ethiopia, in Kenya, and so
Mm-hmm.
on, Tanzania. And you had to bring all of these individuals together. So it took some time, a key task that had to be done. And
Mm-hmm.
basically we were starting from scratch. So we had to form a new parliament, had to be set up with from all of the parties. As I said, a new
Mm-hmm.
government had to be set up, which was done in 2020. The new government was set up, and the vice president I spoke about returned in December of 2019 to South
Mm-hmm.
Sudan, something that we thought would not have happened, but he was able to come back and be part of the government. And
Mm-hmm.
there were several tasks that were supposed to be done to lead up to elections,
Okay.
including the unification of the military. Because bear in mind, you had a civil war, so you have
Right.
different militaries that were fighting. The idea was now, if you're going to have a unified government, you also need a unified military,
Mm-hmm.
because what we identified during the negotiations, that the fighting happened when those militaries kind of went up against each other. So now you need to
Mm.
get them as one unified force under
Right.
one
On one accord.
commander in chief,
On
right?
the one high goal. On the
Oh,
one goal that is higher than all of the little groups.
absolutely,
Mhm.
absolutely. So that was supposed to have been done. It involved, and I don't know if you've seen my Facebook page, you will see a picture that I have with tens of hundreds of soldiers,
Yes.
and basically that was part of the process to bring them from different warring parties together. But that
Mm-hmm.
process was never really completed in time, because
Mm.
the idea was that you would do the unification, and then they would then be in charge for security during the elections.
Okay.
All right. Then, in addition to that, you have to form, because there were no institutions in South Sudan then. So
Mm-hmm.
you have to set up a national electoral commission. You have to set up a national constitutional review commission. Now that commission is critical because the one of the triggers that we identified as conflict was the existing constitution at the time. The
Right.
constitution that was drafted when the country got its independence in 2011
Mm-hmm. So
was part
prior
of the
to conflict.
problem. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
prior to the conflict. So
Mm-hmm.
they got the independence in 2011 from Sudan. Um, and now they were the world's youngest nation. And they had a constitution that was largely drawn from the constitution of their former colonizer, Sudan.
Right.
So we understood that this constitution needed to be changed. You needed a constitution that reflected more closely the hopes and aspirations of the vast majority of the South Sudanese, and not just the dominant parties.
Right.
And also, it
Right.
was important to decentralize power
Mm-hmm.
from the center to the
Mm-hmm.
various states, because you have
Right.
you have 10 states in South Sudan. It's a huge country. In fact, before the breakup, Sudan was the largest country in Africa in
Wow.
terms of land area. So it's a huge area, and you needed that to be done. So a number of things that had to be done to get elections in 2021 was not in place.
Structurally.
So it
Structurally.
was it was agreed to extend by a further 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
So that decision was taken in 2022 to extend by 2 years and to have elections in December of this year. So
Mm-hmm.
this really should have been elections in South Sudan. But
Mm-hmm.
again, because of some of the issues I spoke about, the difficulties, the problems of getting things together, of
Mm-hmm.
getting the commission, because once, for example, the electoral commission was set up, they had to get to work. They had to be
Right.
funded. They had to build headquarters. They had to set up offices all over the states. The National Review Commission had to actually draft a new constitution that
Mm-hmm.
involved consultation with the people of South Sudan. So that had not taken place as yet. And then
Mm-hmm.
there was also the issue of reconciliation. You had several
That's
committees that were set.
important.
Yeah, very, very important.
Mm-hmm.
Something along the lines of what happened in Rwanda,
Rwanda.
to actually
Mm-hmm.
have, some kind of truth commissions that would be
Yeah.
set up. So there's a lot of work that had to be done in a very short space of time. So the long and short of it is that we get to a couple of months ago, and it became clear that December was not going to happen for
Mm-hmm.
elections. So they've once again agreed to postpone it by further 2 years. So elections will
Mm-hmm.
take place in 2025.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, so elections will take place next year in 2025.
What I'm hearing from that is the consequences of politics, like political trauma, and how much time healing takes, and work, and energy, and money, and focus. You know. Well, this is powerful. What you're talking about. Um, you seem to know Africa well.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
We're in
Yeah, I
Africa.
know. Yeah, yeah, because I worked, most of my work, which was over 14 years at the IMF, I worked on
Hmm.
Africa.
We're in
So
Africa.
I worked on basically all over. I worked on West Africa, both on because of my ability, I speak French, I'm fluent in French. I was able
Okay.
to work on Francophone Africa. So I worked on
Wow.
countries like Niger, Mali,
Mm-hmm.
sorry, Benin.
Mm-hmm.
Um, worked on those countries, Senegal as well, in terms of the
Mm-hmm.
French, West Africa. But I also
Yeah.
worked on the Gambia, Ghana, then on East Africa, Ethiopia,
Mm-hmm.
Southern Africa, South Africa, Namibia, um, uh, Lesotho. Now is
Yes.
Iswati, the kingdom of
Right.
Iswati.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, it has changed
Right.
its name
Mm-hmm.
recently.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I have a very good knowledge of the continent, and I feel that I've been really blessed to be able to work on the continent, and it is something about coming from Dominica and
Right.
being able to contribute to the continent. To me, that there is no higher calling in life, really.
Right.
Is one thing to work for your country, it's another thing to work on the continent, and the kind
Mm-hmm.
of vibe is something that you can describe,
Mm-hmm.
but it's just a vibe. You just feel it. It's almost like a spiritual connection.
Yes. Yes.
You
Yes.
feel that, yeah, you belong. That's where, you feel your heart. That's where it
Yes.
is. It's amazing, and that's why I encourage, anybody who has the opportunity, any African of African descent who have the opportunity, even just to visit the continent, to make the
Mm-hmm.
opportunity to visit the continent, and you'll see what I'm
Yeah.
talking about. It is something that you really can't explain, but it's powerful, man. It is. It
Yes.
is.
So this is making me think about roots, right? And our rooting and our foundation.
Yes.
So
Yes.
can you tell me a little bit about your Dominica rooting, your foundation, before you left and went out? And interestingly, like you say, almost a spiritual opportunity to root yourself even deeper in Africa itself. So what was it like for you growing up in Dominica? And was
Yeah.
your diaspora story? I mean, how did you come to even leave Dominica to go to all of these
Yes.
places?
Yes, yes. All right, wonderful. You bring a smile to my face because you're talking about my childhood brings up just a tremendous amount of joy, because I think that
Mhm,
these were my happiest days as a
mhm.
kid, born in the village of Grand Forks, a small village of 700 people, and just growing up there among the trees, among the fruits, among the because if you know Grand Fort, it is just a garden, a veritable
Yes.
garden of everything,
Mm.
bananas, yams, plantains, flowers, trees, birds and
Mhm.
animals, and it's just a wonderful place. And so I grew up in that kind of environment. I was kind of fortunate as well, because when I went to school, I think my teachers saw in me some promise. So at
Mhm.
that time they used to skip
Right.
kids. So I was skipped
Mhm.
through. I tell people I'm probably one of the few people to make. I actually made at the time standard free,
Mhm.
and I was not yet 10 years. So I shared the news that if I had not passed the common entrance, I would have had to spend 5 years in standard free, because people will live in primary school in standard free at the age of 15.
Right.
Really not going
Right.
to high school. So I actually got there because I was
Mhm.
skipped so quick so many
Right.
times. I was skipped out getting to classes, you're too bad for this class,
Too
move to the
much.
next.
Yes.
So, I was able to do that and start my common entrance at just
Mhm.
when I was just before I turned 10, in fact.
Mhm.
Went to the academy,
Mhm.
to the SMA, and
Mhm.
from the SMA, it did well, went to sixth form. And when
Mhm.
I was through with sixth form, I came back. I taught for 3 years at the academy. All right,
Mm.
at my alma mater, I
Right.
actually taught, boy, 6 different subjects. I taught math, I taught geography, I taught history, principles of business, principles of accounting, and
Wow.
there was, of course, commerce. I taught that,
Mm-hmm.
and then I
I
also
remember
taught
Thomas.
students who wanted to do their GCs over. So I taught a number of.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I began to know people. I taught a number of persons, government workers, for example, who were
Right.
already working, but who wanted to do an additional subject. At that time, that was very popular. Persons
Mm-hmm.
who probably were in the public service had not really passed, or they wanted to do an extra subject, they would
Right.
come to the academy. So we had those classes in the afternoon. So I would prepare students to do the GCs in
Wow.
accounting and in principles of business and
Mm-hmm.
in commerce. So I did that for 3 years. And
Mm-hmm.
then from there, I got a Canadian government scholarship to go to UE.
Mm.
So I went to UE to do economics, to pursue
Right.
a degree
Right.
in economics, which I did
Yes.
successfully. Once I was done with that, after 3 years, I returned to Dominica and
Mm-hmm.
I started working at the statistical office of the Ministry of Finance.
Okay.
Later on, I got promoted to be the deputy chief statistician in that office. I
Wow.
spent basically 6 years. So in
What have
working,
you not? I mean, what is not on your resume? I mean, keep going.
so I spent 6 years working there. But interestingly enough, during my time of working in statistics, I also
Uh-huh.
and that's why I think I'm a workaholic. At least I try to do it. So I was working at statistics. I was actually
Mm-hmm.
responsible for calculating the growth rate of the economy of the country,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yes.
also a balance of payments, our exports, imports, our flows, and so on. That would be my task to calculate.
Mm-hmm.
But then at 10 o'clock in the morning, I would leave to go to the sixth form college. At the time, it was sixth form college to
Right.
teach the A-level students economics.
Mm-hmm.
Then I would go back at 2 o'clock in the afternoon to teach the math students statistics.
Wow.
There's a math element to the statistics.
Mm-hmm.
Then after work, I would go to UE, where I taught statistics, math, and economics
Wow.
to the first year students. But we had just started this off campus learning in the
Mm-hmm.
territories.
Mm-hmm.
So I was one of the first lecturers. I was doing the statistics and the math component of the first year
Mm-hmm.
college, UE part of it. So I did that basically for 6 years. You know, one of
Mm-hmm.
my biggest achievements, I believe, and I'll just mention it, is that
Mm-hmm.
for economics at the sixth form college, before I came there, although I did economics, I only
Mm-hmm.
got a C when I did economics. All right.
Yes.
I only got a C. And
In
before
A
I started
levels, A
teaching at the
levels
A
or
levels, A
GPA.
levels, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Before I started teaching, there was one person who had gotten an A in
Mm.
economics, in all of the history of economics being taught
Yes.
and
That's
done
typical.
at C4 In my first year, I got 4 A's. I got 4 students. I prepared the students, got 4 A's. And that, I
Wow.
believe, is a record that I stood. It was never equal, never
Wow.
surpassed. But I was able to prepare this. And every year I would get 2 or 3, A's during the years
Yes.
that I taught.
Wow.
And so I was able to do that successfully
Mm-hmm.
for 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then so that would be in 1994, I successfully applied for a scholarship. Interestingly enough, at the time I was given 2 options. I was given a Canadian government scholarship to go to the to Canada
Mm-hmm.
uh, to do I think it was a degree in international. Well, I can't remember what exactly it was, but anyway, I was given that option to go
Mm-hmm.
to McGill or to go to the
Mm-hmm.
United States.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I chose the United States, and I got an OA scholarship to go to United States, to Clemson University, to do
Wow.
a master's in economics. So I get to Clemson
Mm-hmm.
in 1990, 94,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. I got to Clemson in 1994, and
Mm-hmm.
after my first semester, of the 2 years, because it's a 2 year program,
Mm-hmm.
the lecturer says, "Well, we need you in our as our cohort of students, and we'll give you a full scholarship to do
Wow.
your PhD." And that was it. I said, "Well, I certainly cannot pass that. I never
Yeah.
imagined that I would have
Right.
been able to, to get that far, because initially it was just the thing." So I completed my 2 years, and then the school took over and basically
Wow.
funded me, straight through. I was able to do teaching there as well. Started to teach the
Mm-hmm.
students. So I thought, and one of the things, again, just because of my experience as a teacher, it
Mm-hmm.
came through. So after my
Right.
first year of teaching, after that,
Mm-hmm.
every semester, my class was the first to fill up because people got the news that this guy is a really good teacher. He makes us pass even when we don't know the
Right.
subject, and so on. And I
Right.
was able to, again, because of just my love. That's my first love. Huh? I love teaching. I love
Mm-hmm.
to be able to explain things, and just
Mm-hmm.
to be able to have people break it down in a way that people can
Right.
understand. And so I was
Bite-sized
able
pieces.
to do that, rather successfully, and spend. So whilst I was finishing up my PhD at
Mm-hmm.
Clemson,
Mm-hmm.
I started to look around for opportunities, for work opportunities. So I applied to the International Monetary Fund, and lo
Wow.
and behold, I heard nothing until 3 months later. I got a call that says, "Come up for an interview in Washington." So I left South Carolina, went there,
Yes.
did the interview, did the panel, the whole
How
panel
many
in
people? You said a
interviews.
panel,
Yeah.
suggesting that there were several people interviewing you at the same
Yes,
time.
yes. So not only several people in one, but you do different ones as well.
Mm-hmm.
People
Mm-hmm.
come at you from all kinds of corners with all kinds of questions, your
Sure.
background, your competence, your ability to do
Mm-hmm.
research, and all the
Right.
rest of it. So I was fortunate in that at the time I was researching a very important subject. I was researching currency crisis. So that was around 1998, and
Uh-huh.
the Asian crisis that had just started. I don't know if you recall
Mm-hmm.
that in 1998, there was a very serious banking and currency crisis in the Asian countries. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
bank collapses, a lot of currencies got devalued very rapidly, and
Mm-hmm.
so on. So there was a lot of interest to kind of understand why that was happening, and if you
Mm-hmm.
could predict this with some certainty. Because if you're
Mm-hmm.
able to predict it's going to happen, you can take some measures
Measures in
to
place.
prevent it from happening.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What did your research show?
So my research was able to identify some key factors to look at, some key statistics. So
Mm-hmm.
if you notice the trend for example, if you notice the trend in build-up of bank liabilities or
Right.
bank non-performing loans, or if you
Mm-hmm.
notice a trend in the macroeconomics of the country, like
When you
your
say that, when you
GDP.
say macroeconomics, what do you mean for
All right,
people
I mean,
who?
like your gross domestic product, the output of the country is probably not doing as well as it ought to. It's not
Mm-hmm.
it's not working as well, and those kind of things. So
Mm-hmm.
based on that, I was able to I think that's what kind of made it easier for me to get into the IMF, because that was a
Mm-hmm.
great area of interest, and I was doing some good research in that area.
Yeah.
And I should also add as well, whilst I was at the school, I believe the faith in the school was that the place in me was rewarded, because I got the top students in a graduate school.
Wow.
It was very
Wow.
satisfying, because you had students from all over the world. You had Indian
Yes.
students, you had Chinese students, you had
Yes.
African, European, American, all
Right.
over, because it's an international school. And so I got the best student.
It's a
But
top-notch school. Clemson is a top-notch school.
it is in fact the person who got the award that I got 2 years before.
Mm-hmm.
When he finished, he actually went to Harvard as a
Yeah.
professor. He
Yeah.
got
Yeah.
accepted as a professor in Harvard. So it's
Mm-hmm.
so it's a quality school. And so there was a
Mm-hmm.
lot of that type of pressure. And I thought that it was good, because that again helped my profile, and
Right.
the research that I was doing, and I was able to get. So that's how I got into the into the IMF, and spent
Yes.
14 years there.
Wow. 14 years.
14 years, yeah.
Oh my goodness. I remember growing up and feeling afraid of the IMF. Like, they used to they used to talk about the IMF and, they're going to put us under restrictions and this and that. But I mean, give us a little bit about what the IMF does in the world.
I'm really happy you raised that because, because you had a lot of data. People
Mm-hmm.
view the IMF as the organization that put countries in peril, especially third world countries. But an
Mm-hmm.
interesting thing happened there when I got there I completed my research in 2000, actually got in 1998.
Mm-hmm.
And soon after I got in, the IMF started a program called the HIPIC Initiative, the Heavily Indebted Poor Country Initiative,
Okay.
where they understood that a major problem for most countries was the debt issue,
Mm-hmm.
especially African countries,
Mm-hmm.
and that a significant amount of their revenues that they raise through taxes and other government revenues goes towards repaying those debts,
Right.
because over the years they have assumed a lot of debt. A lot of it sometimes not necessarily for infrastructure, but just for consumption, wasteful
Mm-hmm.
spending. But
Mm-hmm.
if you take those loans, you have to repay them, because as soon
Right.
as you stop repaying them, you lose access to more loans. So it's
Mm-hmm.
a kind of a vicious cycle. You take on loans, you service them, you get more,
Right.
and at the end of the day, you're literally drowning in debt. So the
Mm-hmm.
IMF started this program, and I was lucky in that I was working in the African department, and given my statistics background, I was actually pulled into a group that helped develop that particular HIPIC and looked at it in terms of
Mm.
how it should be done and so on. And then we started taking it to the various African countries.
Right.
And at the very core of that was that you negotiate with the creditors,
Mm-hmm.
and that knowledge would come in very handy for me later on. I'll explain in the St. Kitts context.
Yes.
So the idea is to get this, that you would negotiate with the creditors, and they would agree for debt forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so for example, if you owe that, then the largest one was the Paris Club and the multilateral institutions, the IMF itself, the World Bank, they had debts too. So they
Mm-hmm.
would agree that they would forgive those debts, but
Mm-hmm.
the monies that the countries would normally use for repaying that
Okay.
debt, it
Mm-hmm.
would go into health and education specifically.
So kind of like if you have your high interest credit card, they would kind of forgive that, and the money that you had been applying to your credit cards, you could use it for, fixing
Sending your
your
child to
roof.
school,
Yeah,
or
sending your
tuition
child
for
to
your kid.
school. Right,
Exactly,
right, right.
exactly. So that's exactly how it worked. So
Wow.
that money
Okay.
would go. So our job, the economists, especially those of us in the African department, was to
Mm-hmm.
track those spending to make sure that the countries kept to their commitment. So
Right.
that basically meant having access to their budgets. I remember in one time I was at a meeting in Niamey, Niger, and we were
Mm-hmm.
looking at vaccines. How do you
Mm-hmm.
store vaccines? Make sure that monies go into the storage of vaccines for the
Right.
children.
Right.
Those kind of things. That we are counting the construction of schools, the
Mm-hmm.
construction of health centers. Make sure
Mm-hmm.
that these monies actually went into
Where
those
they were
uses
saying they
where
were
they will
sending
say
it.
that yes,
Right,
yes.
right.
So a lot of the countries benefited. African countries benefited from this.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of the Caribbean, two countries that benefited was Haiti and Guyana.
Mm.
That benefited. The rest of the Caribbean countries did not benefit because, according to the World Bank, the Caribbean countries are considered to be middle income countries. They are not
What does that
considered to be
mean?
poor countries. Middle
Oh,
income in
really?
that they have a certain level of income that's above the poverty rate. It is
Right.
not, like, for example, um, the $30 a day,
Mm-hmm.
$30 not a day, $30 a month.
Mm-hmm.
If that's the average earnings, that's considered to be poverty. Okay,
Mm.
the
Right,
average
right,
person earns
right,
about $50 a month.
right.
So $1 a
So it's
day
like you were making too, like some of, like Dominica, for example, was making too much money to
to
qualify, but
benefit.
it was still
Exactly,
struggling, right? Like you're poor,
exactly.
you
We're
still
still struggling, but we still have at high levels of debt. But
right.
because there is a kind of an artificial cut-off point that
Mm-hmm.
looks at your GDP, your gross domestic product, your output, and so on, and you
Mm-hmm.
calculate your per capita income. So based on
Mm-hmm.
our per capita income, we did not qualify.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
only Guyana and Haiti at the time that qualified for that debt
Yeah.
forgiveness. Yeah.
Well,
So
Yeah, as we talk about Dominica, and you mentioned 10 kids, I want us to start turning our angle towards Dominica and the Caribbean. Yeah. A lot of people are saying you help send kids. I know our young people are running off to send kids. What's up with that?
You know, I've been amazed just at the number of Dominicans who have found opportunity in St. Kitts.
Yes.
No, and that was not the case when I went there in 2012, because I got some
Mm-hmm.
time off from the IMF to actually go and
Mm-hmm.
help the country. And I came in there as a debt expert, again, because
Okay.
I knew a lot about debt, again, going
Mm-hmm.
back to that experience that we had, where you have to negotiate with creditors, you have to do, there's a lot of calculations that goes with it.
Mm-hmm.
We do what we call a debt sustainability analysis, where you have to, you throw in the numbers, you crunch out the numbers to see whether or
Right.
not that debt is sustainable within a
So you
certain
use the
level.
data, you use
You
the data, you use the raw numbers to give you a picture, to take a snapshot so you can make
absolutely,
plans for the
yes,
future. Okay.
absolutely,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. So when I
Mm-hmm.
went to St. Kitts had the second highest debt to GDP ratio, because the way you kind of
Wow.
compare countries, you take their debt levels and you divide it by their GDP, by the gross domestic product, and that gives you a
Right.
ratio, and that's how you
Yeah.
can compare countries. So St. Kitts was only second to Japan. Japan had the highest. St. Kitts was
Mm-hmm.
at 163%. By extension, now Dominica currently is out at about just about 100%, 105%. At
Okay.
the time, St. Kitts was 163%.
Yeah.
So the task was, how do you then allow this country? Because again, with that high level of debt, one thing is
Mm-hmm.
certain: an enormous amount of the country's resources is going
Yeah.
into that,
Yes.
maintaining that debt. Because remember, I spoke earlier about, if you want to get more debt, you have to maintain. It's like
Right.
a credit
Right. You
card.
have to pay your
If you
credit.
want
You
to
have to
keep
pay your
credit,
credit
you have to
cards.
maintain. Yeah.
Oh, my battery is doing
Yes.
something weird.
If you want to keep getting credit, you have to keep servicing your credit card. If I'm telling you
Right.
stop, the creditors stop lending you credit. It's the same thing for our
Mm-hmm.
country. So an
Mm-hmm.
enormous amount of resources was going into the repayment of that debt for St.
Mm-hmm.
Kitts. So my task was firstly, and that was sponsored by the European Union. My
Mm-hmm.
task was to devise a debt strategy for
Mm-hmm.
St. Kitts that would allow them to move from that very high level to come down to at least 100% or less than 100%, but to get
Okay.
them down. Ultimately, we got them down to about 63% of GDP, which is really,
Wow.
so you knocked off 100% of GDP
Wow.
get from them. And the way that was done, again, I using the same techniques that was employed for the African
The
countries.
African
I
countries.
basically went around to all of the creditors, Social Security that had lent them a lot of
Right.
money, and the banking system. Now, St. Kitts was interesting because the majority of the debt was owed not to international creditors, but to domestic actors,
Oh,
the
really? So
banks,
local
Social
players.
Security. Yeah.
Wow.
So that poses a slightly different challenge,
Mm-hmm.
because when you come and start asking for debt forgiveness, it has implications. So, for example, if you owe a significant amount to the commercial bank and you're
Right.
now telling the bank to forgive them, it means that that's a significant amount of the resources that they have to
What does the
forgo.
bank do? What does the bank do? Yeah.
Yeah,
Without the
exactly. So
money.
it was a very interesting challenge, but we're able to work around it through negotiations with the Social Security, with the national banks, and so on, with the banking system. They agreed at the time as well. They were fortunate in that they were just moving away from sugar.
Mm.
So they had received a huge infusion of cash from the European
Mm-hmm.
Union as a stabilization fund,
Okay.
because bear in mind they used to export sugar to European countries.
Right.
Similar to us when we're exporting our
Bananas.
bananas, and
Mm-hmm.
it went out, we got a stabilization for bananas called the Stabex
Mm-hmm.
Fund. You may actually remember that.
Mm-hmm.
So we were able to use some of those resources to be able to take care of that. So some of the negotiations was, okay, well, we owe you 100 million. Will you take a burden payment now, say of
Right.
20 million? You forgive another 30 million,
Mm-hmm.
and then we agree to pay you so another 40 million over the next 10 years, and then you
Right.
forgive the other 50 million. So that's basically how that kind of negotiation that happened. And we were able to get St. Kitts to a place where that was done. And once they got that relief from the debt,
Yeah.
they could then start focusing now, because
Yeah.
these monies, a significant amount of money that was being used to service the debt,
Sucking it out.
could now be used to build projects and so on. And they also had something going for them at the time. They had started the CBI program. You might hear some
Your friends. I
noise in
am
the
hearing your
background.
friends. It's okay.
I always say, but why did they do that during the day? You know, they're very ill
That's
disciplined.
okay. That's okay.
I'm sure it's coming across very loudly.
That's okay. That's okay.
And I have no way of stopping them.
That's okay. That's okay.
So it tells you that I'm on the island for
You
sure,
are on the island.
without any question. I freak out because I don't know why they do that during the day. Why they crow and so on during the day? Very ill disciplined. Anyway.
Yes.
So we all right. So hopefully this is something.
You're talking about St. Kitts, and now that they had more access to the money that they had been throwing at their huge debt, they could do other things to stimulate the economy.
Right. Absolutely. And so that's what happened. We were able to get that, and then use their CBI as well was coming in. They were and that's one of the reasons why at the time I found it very strange that St. Kitts was recording so much in CBI revenues, and our revenues were like 20 million, and St. Kitts was already at 260, 300 million. Yeah. And I found it kind of odd, because we seem to have been tracking St. Kitts with the sales, but not with what St. Kitts was doing. There was a lot of openness, a lot of transparency in the St. Kitts program, to the extent where I remember the permanent the PS of finance, the FS of finance, actually calling me one morning and asking me if I can help them look at some areas of investments for the CBI, because they want to make sure that is sustainable, that they can use it for
they're using
not,
it
not
well,
just spend it, but that it can go into investment vehicles
and grow, right? To grow, because it's you don't know how long it might last, right? Given life, exactly. And so you want to use what you do have, create more for tomorrow.
So that's what happened, and and so St. Kitts was able to pull themselves out of that debt trap, and the country really since then started to grow, and again Dominicans have been gravitating. I'm told there are over 3,000 Dominicans there today,
and young, vibrant, skilled, energized Dominicans, young people.
Yeah, and these are the Dominicans that we need here in Dominica, by the way.
Yes,
to develop our country, to grow our country. These are bright sparks that are out there helping develop another country, just a stone's throw away from Dominica.
Yes. So, well, you seem to be dedicated to putting yourself in a position to be able to effect some of these changes that you've described, that you've helped other countries do, like St. Kitts and many of these countries in Africa. You are, like you say, now re-elected as the leader of the United Workers' Party. United Workers' Party was in office for what? For one cycle, 5 years. Was it 95 to 2000?
Correct, yeah.
And they did quite a few things. What I remember is the Creole Festival was established. There was an abattoir foundation.
Anyway, the road network, the high schools that were built. Yeah,
yes, quite a few things in those 5 years. Yes, but we talk about in Dominica we have a phrase. Well, the phrase has been thrown around called external shocks and internal shocks. Yeah, as an organization, clearly you've been hit by some external shock and internal shocks. Yeah. And how are you going to do this? I mean, how are you going to bring the party to a position where you will be able to lead the country? Let me say it like that. How is that going to work?
So it's a huge challenge, and I'll tell you why. It's a huge challenge because of the fact that this government has neglected some of the best, what we call the engines of growth. And here
Mm-hmm.
I'm referring to specifically agriculture. By
Mm-hmm.
neglecting agriculture, it has made it more difficult for any kind of rebound. Also,
Mm-hmm.
by having all the eggs in the CBI basket, that also
Mm-hmm.
poses a huge challenge. Because
Mm-hmm.
if today or tomorrow the CBI is no more, then you have real problems. Where do you get the monies from? So
Right.
it is a daunting challenge, but the good thing Dominica has going for it is just in terms of the size of population. Thankfully,
Mm-hmm.
we are not a very big country.
Mm-hmm.
So it means that if you're able to generate, for example, 5 to 10,000 good paying jobs, you
Mm-hmm.
can almost overnight erase that problem. So
Mm.
the focus really is on how do you create jobs? How do you put
Okay.
the young people to work? How do you
Okay.
put the thousands or hundreds that are running to St. Kitts? How do you keep them here in Dominica to work in Dominica? You know,
Mm-hmm.
and that to me is at the center of any plan to rebuild Dominica. And that's the reason why one of my first engagements was to do this economic conference. Because I
Mm.
thought it was important to get the best thinking around our agriculture, around our
Mm-hmm.
manufacturing, to get the
Mm-hmm.
best thinking and to try to ensure that these individuals are in fact able to to kind of craft a plan that will
Mm-hmm.
help us going forward. So we've been able to do that. We've been able to focus on each of the key sectors: agriculture, the renewable energy part of it, the water industries, the manufacturing sector. Look at some key
Mm-hmm.
sectors, our tourism sector. Look at where the problems are, where the challenges are, and kind of come up with a kind of a blueprint that would allow us to tackle some of those issues within those sectors that would be focused, one, on creating jobs, but secondly
Mm-hmm.
on just creating a level of wealth. Because I believe that we have the resources in Dominica, both our human
Mm-hmm.
resource and our other natural resources. We have those resources to be able to make Dominica not only a place, an average country, but to
Right.
have solid incomes, where people can devote their lives to working and ensure that they have solid incomes, they have what it takes. And I believe that we have everything within Dominica to do that. And that is where the
So,
focus is going to be.
so what would you say to this young guy? I read a post this past week or 2 weeks ago. This past week, he said Dominica is not the best place for young ambition. These days, I feel like my future was stolen from me. Big old bold post on Facebook. What are you saying to this young person?
Sadly, that is the feeling of a lot of young people. I get to speak to them. I mean, the feeling
Mm-hmm.
of doom, of depression, the feeling of hopelessness is rampant among our young people, because the reality is a young person, even leaving our state college today,
Mm-hmm.
hardly is going to find an opportunity in Dominica. And that to me is mind-boggling. It's like we have failed our young people, and that sense of hopelessness, it's reflected in other social ills. All right. So
Mm-hmm.
what we have, for example, is that we have our young people who try to probably smoke their worries away, for example, as one example. So you go to the various villages, you find a lot of the young men, they have a season on a little calabash and they're
Mm-hmm.
cutting up, or they forever have a spliff in their mouth. And
Mm-hmm.
that to me is a symptom of a very frustrated group of people. Because I'm thinking,
Mm-hmm.
when I was their age, I was dreaming big,
Right.
and I
You
go
were
back to
doing
my
all of these big
communities.
things.
I
Right.
was dreaming big, and not only was I dreaming big, but I was able to realize those dreams
Right. Right.
because the
Right.
country provided me those opportunities. It was not
Mm-hmm.
because, I mean, my parents were humble farmers,
Mm-hmm.
working a very, very small piece of land in Grand Fork, but they were able to offer me that sense of hard work and so on. But the country itself, as a country, it provided opportunities for us. I
Mm-hmm.
recall when I graduated from sixth form college, every single one of us got jobs within a month and a half. Every
Mm-hmm.
single one of us who graduated got jobs. Yes, true, it was a smaller class then, a smaller number of students, but at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, there were opportunities there. You don't have that. sadly, in Dominica those days. So there is a deep sense of despair among the young people, and
Mm-hmm.
they do feel like the future has been taken away from them. But I'm
Yeah.
saying that all is not lost. It boils back and it goes squarely back to governance. Okay, it goes
Yeah.
squarely back to governance.
So would you say you have the formula? Because another post, look, I'm on Facebook a lot. Another post I saw was this picture of a ham right before Christmas for $411 and 95 cents, essentially 400 EC dollars, which is about 148 US dollars for a ham before Christmas. And I mean, I didn't exactly know what to say about it. I mean, it just hurt my stomach. I thought it was too preposterous. So I didn't even comment on it. But I mean, a lot of people are saying we're buying so much stuff from outside, yeah, or imports exceeding our exports. I mean, how do you envision the role of, say, international trade, revitalizing Dominica's economy? I mean, how do you see that? Do you think you have a formula?
Yes, I do, and again, that is simply born out of my immense experience. Because remember, that is what I've been doing practically all of
Mm-hmm.
my life, and being able to work. And even when I worked at the IMF, I was very strategic, because at the back
Mm-hmm.
of my mind, I was always doing it for Dominica. So even
Mm-hmm.
my choice of countries, it would be take the more challenging ones.
Mm.
All right. Work on the ones that
Yeah.
are more challenging, because you're going to need that experience
Yeah.
when you get back to Dominica. That was
Yeah.
always at the back of my mind. I wasn't going to work there forever. I was at
Yeah.
some point going to come back to Dominica, but I
Mm-hmm.
needed to do that. So I have, it's like seen that, done that, like I
Mm-hmm.
understand, because you're talking about, populations of millions of people,
Right.
right? I mean, in those countries. And that's why I said, and that's why I immediately jumped to our size of population as one of our
Mm-hmm.
saving graces, because we don't
Mm-hmm.
have to find jobs for 20 million people.
Right.
We have to
Okay.
find
As you say that, so another, I mean, I hate that we have so many ready examples of this, but if you think about Dominican entrepreneurs, like our truckers, recently they blocked the roads because they're terrified. They're anxious about their livelihood. And I understand attracting foreign investment and having big capital projects, but do you have a plan or a way to boost local entrepreneurship in a way that does not overwhelm us, in a way that doesn't hurt our people, that doesn't put our people out of business?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And I'll tell you how that is done in a lot of countries. And something I've suggested to this government is that
Mm-hmm.
anytime you're negotiating any type of project,
Mm-hmm.
the onus is on the government to negotiate in their people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
The foreign contractor is not going to do it for you, because he wants to get as much as he can out of the project.
Mm-hmm.
If you offer him 100%, he will take 100%, right?
Right. Right.
So it's up
Right.
to you as a government when you're negotiating. And that is where I think our government has failed miserably. They
Yeah.
have failed the people of Dominica by failing to insert within those contracts a mandatory amount for the local population. And that
Mm-hmm.
becomes even more important when it is being paid for by your own resources, as it is for major projects here in Dominica. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a major failure. So the way you correct it, and in fact, when I had an opportunity a few weeks ago to speak to the Chinese ambassador, that's what I
Mm-hmm.
told him. I told him that the Dominican public are not happy
Right.
with these contracts, the way these contracts have been done. And
Mm-hmm.
obviously, I mean, to him, it's not his. He said, well, it's a private firm. But I
Right.
wanted to register to him the concern of the
Mm-hmm.
Dominican public about the way those contracts are designed. And one
Mm-hmm.
of the things that I've said repeatedly in public is that if given the opportunity to be a part of a government in Dominica, that has to be a critical part of what we will do. You negotiate that in, and there are enough projects. Okay,
Yes.
and I'll give you another example. Look at the NEP
Mm-hmm.
program, for example, that employs quote unquote young people. So in my
Mm-hmm.
village, a number of our young persons who left high school, that's where they found an opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
I see them with their long trousers, their long shirts, and their hats and so on, cutting grass
Mm-hmm.
by the roadside. And I'm like, no. Whilst I have nothing against cutting grass, but hey, I want you to be in a place where you're thinking. I want you to be in a
Mm-hmm.
place where you're being creative. You're using your youth
Mm-hmm.
to do creative things, whether it's
Yeah.
in marketing, whether it's in building an app, whether it is in helping a business improve its marketing campaign.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I want your creativeness,
Right.
and leave the grass cutting for probably an older set of persons. Okay,
Yes.
and so
Yes.
so what the way I would deal with that issue is revert back to the public works, because the public works did an excellent job in terms of
Yes.
maintaining our roads,
They
maintaining
did.
our roadsides and so on. Put that back, re-establish the public works that will get
Mm-hmm.
government support to do this. And then for the young people, you want them to be involved in actual work, all right, in
Right.
terms of have them attached. So you have a young person now attached to a business. Um,
Mm-hmm.
they are learning their accounting skills on the job,
Apprenticing.
a kind of apprentice system. So you
Mm.
pay them for that apprenticeship, but in the
Right.
meantime, they're getting a relevant
And
skill.
learning the skills.
They're learning
Yes.
a skill. They're adding their creativity. They're
Mm-hmm.
helping to build. So that person now, for example, working with a business might be able to come up with some ideas as to how the business can expand, can
Right.
probably use their intuitiveness to go on the internet, do something, expand the reach of the
For sure.
business. That is what you want. You want that kind of youth involvement to that
Mm-hmm.
level. So
Yeah.
that is how I would pivot a national employment program to ensure
Okay.
that the youth are gainfully employed in those types of situation on a kind of
Mm-hmm.
apprenticeship, a job skills process. And
Gainfully
that is
in a long
subsidized by
term
government.
way.
Yeah. Yes,
Gainfully, not just in the short term with the
exactly.
$1,000 a month, but in a long term way, so that even if they lose that position, they can parlay the skills and the training they attain to create a business themselves, to do other things, to work somewhere else.
Exactly. So you're training electricians, you're training
Mm-hmm.
plumbers, you're
Mm-hmm.
training computer repair persons,
Right, right,
all of
right,
these things. So that even if and then that
right,
also allows them, so that if they decide to move out of Dominica, even
right.
then they have a skill that they can
Mm-hmm.
immediately sell outside,
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
right now, take our young people, and that's where the frustration level mounts up. They
Mm-hmm.
work 10 years in the NAP, and the only skill they have acquired is how to use a, a
A cutter,
swiper,
grass
right?
cutter.
A
Right,
grass
right,
cutter.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Now, that's not even transferable necessarily. You go overseas, and well, there are
yeah.
tens of
Anybody
other
can do it.
people
Yeah,
doing the same thing.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I think that this is a huge feeling of this government. And I think part of it has been a neglect of the young people. It's
Mm-hmm.
almost like this government is seeing past the young people. It has not
Mm-hmm.
seen the need to maintain and sustain them, and that to me is a real problem.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you, Doc, we have all sorts of issues linked to this, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Because we have high rates of dropouts
Right.
in the schools because people don't feel motivated. I met a frustrated
Mm-hmm.
young man in my constituency that says, man, I I did so well at
Yeah.
state college in math and in all my
Wow.
subjects, and I cannot find anything. I cannot find it. I've been everywhere, you know, and to me, you must, as a country, must be able to provide for people like that.
For
You
sure.
just
For
have to. It
sure.
is it is it is important that you do, and it can be done.
It can
It
be
can be
done.
done. We have areas we've not explored in Dominica, or manufacturing sector, for example,
Mm-hmm.
our water industries. Millions and millions of gallons of water rushes from the mountains into the sea every single day. And we've not found a way to harness that. We've not found a way to get that to neighboring countries. I mean, something's wrong with that picture, right?
As you talk about the water rushing to the sea, last week, the week before Christmas, there was so much water rushing to the sea. The rains were there, right? Yes, we have our hurricane season every year as well. And a lot of people were panicked about the bridges due to the ferocity of the water. We have so much water in Dominica. Bridges like Hampstead, Point Michelle, to name a few. Do you think it makes financial sense to fix the infrastructure in the country? You think
Absolutely,
it makes
it
financial
does.
sense?
It does. It does. And you see the infrastructure in terms of bridges, but more importantly, in agriculture, the feeder roads.
Yes.
I mean, you have tens of miles of feeder roads that are not used, that are impassable because they've not been repaired over almost the entire lifetime of this government. So
Yes.
yeah, a major investment in our infrastructure that is targeted towards improving agriculture, improving manufacturing, improving our
Mm-hmm.
transportation, system. We absolutely need that.
Mm-hmm.
And the important thing now, the government has made substantive amounts of monies to be able to invest in those areas, but we're not seeing that investment. We're not seeing those investments, and that is what you need because that those types of investment will help create the basis on which you can build jobs
Right.
and you can build a strong and thriving economy. It's about time people from outside start to come down to Dominica and leave as well, right? We can do with some of our neighbors. The same way Dominicans populate Guadeloupe and Martinique and St.
Right.
Martin and Sabre and Bats and
Right.
Wheeler, Tortola. We can do the same. They need to come
Yes.
to Dominica to work, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So that to me is the future. That to me is the vision. How do
Okay.
we create that environment that will create those kinds of jobs for Dominicans to
Mhm.
come back to? And that is what I'm committed to.
Well, thank you for saying that because that was going to be my next question. As a newly elected leader, what is your vision? What is your vision for Dominica uh, in the next 5, 10 years, 20
And it's
years,
a
50 years?
vision, and it's a vision that I hope the people of Dominica um, allows to be fulfilled. Because without the
Hmm.
support of the Dominican public, without the support of the voters of Dominica, it will not be possible. It will just be that, a dream.
Well, what do you want to say to the voters of Dominica then?
I want to say to them to do the right thing, and I believe the right thing is to put in place a government that has a track record, by the way, because you talked earlier about the 5 years of a UWP government.
Hmm.
So there is a track record, and that continues to this day. And
Hmm.
so, what I would like to say is that I would like them to invest in that vision that I'm going to explain now, in that vision for the future. And that vision is one where we can create wealth for our people. Okay. And I say that without any hesitation. I firmly believe that we in Dominica, we can create a significantly high living standard that will generate wealth for our people. And that will come
Yes.
the hard way. That will come through work, that will come
Yes.
through industry, and there are areas we can develop. We can develop, for example, the marijuana industry.
Hmm.
That's an industry that can be tapped, that we can
Hmm.
make money from. The water industry is another one. Our
Hmm.
own agriculture that we can tie in with agro processing,
Hmm.
have a very strong dairy. Why, for example, should we be importing ham for $400 into Dominica when you could
Hmm.
have your own ham industry in Dominica? That's all you
Right.
need from
Right.
smoke, right? And pork. That's
Right.
it. It's not even rocket science. Okay.
Yeah.
So there are things that can be done in a sustainable way in Dominica. And that to me is the vision. How do we create? And the vision is one of creating wealth
Hmm.
through job creation
Hmm.
that will make Dominica literally the best place to live, to work, and to enjoy life. And that to me is what we have as a vision, people first within the United Workers' Party. And that is
Hmm.
what we continue to appeal to the Dominican public about. And I must say that the message is going out there because in my travels around Dominica, the reception has been just simply powerful and awesome. I think people are beginning to take notice because they're hearing about the successes of other countries. They're hearing about
Right.
the success of St. Kitts and Nevis, and they say, "But what
Right.
is wrong with us? Why
Right.
can't we have that same success here in Dominica?" And so, it calls for a certain skill set to be able
Hmm.
to deal
It
with those
does.
challenges.
Hmm.
And that is what I believe myself and the United Workers' Party offers to the Dominican public. And I hope that they can buy into it.
Okay. Thank you for that. As you say that, and as I recall the way you talked about bringing so many people together in South Sudan, people who had been very hurt, brutalized, yeah, who had hurt each other, loss of lives, a lot, right? So a lot of pain, but still being able to bring people together. I saw a flyer with you and attorney Joshua Francis and Mr. Bernardito of the Dominica Freedom Party discussing collaborating, my guess is, versus competition, which is for me a high vibration goal. Dominica first. I would have liked to see Team Unity there, I gotta say. I'm not sure why they refused or if they were invited. What was that about? What is your hope with that?
So my hope is that we can have a unified opposition
Mm-hmm.
because this Dominican Labour Party government is well entrenched.
Mm-hmm.
They found a way to curry favor with a
Mm-hmm.
significant part of the population through a
Mm-hmm.
process of, let's face it, bribery, option,
Right, right.
bribery.
Clearly,
So
it's
one
clear.
of even the houses they use as bribes.
Mm-hmm.
So
Very sad
you're
too.
given a house that you don't own,
Oh,
but you understand that to maintain this house or to keep it, you have to be supportive of this government. All right. So that is what we've seen. That is what exists. And so, how we get that mindset, how we reverse that mindset is going to be extremely, extremely critical. You know? All right. I'm not sure what happened, but you are frozen. All right. So I'm sure you are trying to resolve that particular issue. So I'm not sure what happened. Let me see. Let me see if there are any questions that I can take. I'm not sure. We seem to have a technical issue with the guest. All right. I guess she will come back on soon. Yeah. We'll just wait a few minutes. I see we are still live, so that is good. So if you have any questions, if you are listening to us live and you have any question or any issue that you would like to raise, I would certainly be happy to address it while we wait for this our host to reestablish some contact, as I'm sure that she will. Yeah. So I'm not sure what I should do. But just wait for a little while. In case you're just joining us, we've been talking to Dr. Triphi, and I see that she's back. Yes, she
my
is.
battery is so messing with me today. My battery is so messing with me today. Oh,
It's
thank you for
wonderful.
holding
Yeah,
the
I
fort
was just
down.
trying to kind of fill in the time there.
Ah,
So I'm
it
glad you're
might
back
go off
with
on
us.
me again, but that's all right. We're rolling with the punches.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes. So, where were we? I heard you keeping the crowd connected. Let's take a couple of
Yes.
questions from them. From
All right.
LL, who's asking,
Yes.
yes,
What role do you see agriculture play in Dominica's economic revival, and how will you support farmers? How do you plan to make Dominica self-sufficient in food production, reduce dependency on imports? Man, that's a beautiful question, and it is right up the thinking. In terms of making agriculture, in my mind, has to be front and center of any economic push in Dominica. Agriculture must be that foundation on which we build. And anywhere you have successful agriculture, you have a significant amount of government involvement. And typically, government's role is to provide the enabling environment, but more importantly, when it's be to subsidize if necessary. Governments have to be willing to subsidize. If you're going to have to be self-sufficient in food, if you're going to be the breadbasket of the Caribbean region, it may call for some government subsidies. Okay, but it's in government, it's about give and take. You can
right.
give subsidies, you will take it back in another way.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you will take it back in another way, and there is just no question about it. So you give in on one hand and you take back on the other, because once the economy starts to grow with agriculture, you can now, more people have spending power. Your sales taxes are going to increase, your revenues, your income taxes are going to increase. All of that is going to happen. All right. So the way you tackle this particular issue of self-sufficiency is to make sure that the government has essential planning. There was a time we had agriculture centers all over Dominica. We had them in Granby, in St. Joseph, in La Plaine, and different areas of Dominica, in Portsmouth. These are all gone. At those centers, farmers would be taught how to grow livestock, how to grow different crops, and so on. All of that happened in real time. So I believe that we can get to that point again. But what it will take, and the commitment that I would like to give to the Dominican public, is that we will put the resources necessary into revamping the agriculture sector, and that is key. That is key. Okay, so that is a good question. Let me see if I can get some more questions. We seem to have another issue there with the cutting off of the phone of Dr. Triphi. She's able to send the questions to me. All right, we have a question on the diaspora. How can the diaspora get involved? You know, I've always maintained that if you're going to have a sustained program of development in Dominica, that it must involve the diaspora. And I say this because we have a certain skill set out there that we no longer have in Dominica. We have persons in every single area that you can think about in the diaspora. And these are Dominicans, by the way, who love their country and who want to contribute. We will have a dedicated ministry that will be focused on the diaspora, focused in the way that we want the diaspora investment. For example, in the past, a number of our diaspora people have been able to invest in houses, in homes, okay? But we want to go beyond homes. Can we, for example, encourage a group of diasporans to put together their monies and invest in a manufacturing facility in Dominica, okay? Can we get that level of investment so that we move beyond just the barrel economy into sustainable job-creating efforts? And so that is what we'll attempt to do. You know, I was just reacting to a question there on Facebook about getting the diaspora involvement, and I was saying that I would like to see a more structured way in which the diaspora can contribute. People are playing their part in terms of supporting their families by sending remittances, by sending the barrels, and so on during the year. But I want us to move beyond that. There are ways that diasporans can contribute. For example, there could be a diaspora bond that is floated.
Right.
A bond that will have a return for those doing it, but that can then be used in different areas of development.
So what you're saying is we're human beings, and so even if diaspora have big hearts, they also have families to take care of, so that there's something in it for them when they do that kind of participation and giving. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely. And then also, if you think about it, if the diaspora can get involved to the extent that I'm thinking about in terms of investments, and it means that family member that they're sending money for, they may no longer need to send this money, because this family member is now working and earning their own good salary every month.
Exactly.
You know, so it's a benefit, it's a plus, because now, you know, that person is sustained. All right. So there are different ways that it can be done, but it has to be structured. We have the minds, we have the people out there. There's no question about it. I have been in touch with Dominicans of all walks of life, of every single occupation that you can think of. The capabilities are there. Is to find a way to harness that. And in fact, I have not only have I thought about it, I have written about it. I've researched this topic. Such is my belief that the diaspora are critical. I've researched that topic and written extensively about the diaspora involvement in investments and in helping to develop a country. And I believe that I want to move beyond just the academics of it, in terms of the research that was done,
right,
to actualizing it, to making it happen.
Put it into a practical form. To do
absolutely.
It. Yes,
absolutely.
Yes. So Dave asked, what is your view of developing the cannabis industry? And you talked a little bit about that earlier, but can you expound?
So the cannabis industry to me is critical and important for Dominica. I believe that there is a lot of money to be made by developing. My understanding is that we have one of the best strands or grades of marijuana in Dominica, again, because of the nature of our soils. And so being able to develop that industry to the point where it is creating jobs for our people is very important. I believe that this government dropped the ball when it simply reverted to allowing people to grow free trees. That is not the idea. We don't want free trees in the backyard.
Right.
We want hundreds of trees in the field that can be harvested and that can be sent overseas to heal people.
Right.
That is what we want. That is what we will be after. And I can promise that when we form this next government, that this will be right front and center as part of the general thrust to revamp the agriculture sector.
You know, when you talk about cannabis and all of its healing properties, right? Cannabis, we've used cannabis to hurt ourselves sometimes, you know, as in people overuse it. Yeah. But there are many healing properties and with Dominica's nature island of the Caribbean tag, I mean, I see that fit in well with our ethos, you know, like what we stand for.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, it is. It fits right in. We have the capability to grow large quantities, and we have the ability to make the money. Now that this industry has opened up across the world, we need to take advantage of it, and we should. We should. We absolutely should. Yeah.
Well, I want to ask you a few rapid fire questions. I want to ask you, what has been your greatest pain as you've watched Dominica, even as you've gone off to help so many countries in Africa, so many countries in the Caribbean? What has been your biggest pain watching Dominica as you describe it now?
My biggest pain is our young people, to see the situation of our young people in this country. Because I see myself back then as a youth man and seeing what our young people have to go through, particularly our young men. The amount of pain, the amount of devastation, the amount of war. You know, I visited a family in Montrachet a couple of days ago whose son was just murdered by another young man in the village. Two neighbors. And for seemingly no reason. This guy enters the guy home and just brutally, the rage, the anger, that was displayed in his brutal attack, for what? But that is what is going through. That's what our young people are going through. And that is what brings to me, that's what pains me the most. And I would do anything to be able to reverse that problem that our young people are having. Anything, and the best way to do that is to provide opportunities for young people. That is the way they're going to get out of this. That's the way they're going to build their lives. That's just the way it's going to. Is if you're willing to get out of this, it has to be the economic way.
What has been your biggest joy as you think about Dominica?
My biggest joy is in the hope of what can be. Because you look at Dominica and you see a land of opportunity. You see a land that is blessed with just a tremendous amount of resources. If you look at the amount of geothermal energy that we have in the country, plus we have the sun, we have the wind, we have the wave power, we have hydro. It's an incredible amount of resources. We have rich, fertile soil. Particularly every inch of this country, you can grow something. All sorts of fruits, crops, and so on. I remember I was looking at some history of Dominica, and in the 60s, we were growing 63 different fruits and crops that were being most of them exported. 63.
Yeah.
So my greatest joy is at knowing that the opportunity exists to build this country and to create opportunities for the people of this country. That's what gives me the greatest joy, because I know it is possible. I know it is doable. Yeah.
Okay. Dave is asking, instead of coming home to vote, can you have members of the diasporans to be represented in parliament? What do you think about that?
That's an idea that has been floated. I would like to see our diaspora engaged in a lot more meaningful way. And if that is one way of doing that, then why not? I talked about having a dedicated ministry. It could be that is probably the way to actually do it. Where you have a diaspora representative, so they're represented at the level of a minister. That is certainly something to look at, because we are looking to engage the diaspora beyond where they engage now. And part of it has to be a give. Again, you give and you take. Part of taking from them is what we spoke about, but giving back is to give them a greater say, a greater stake in what is happening in the country, and that could very well be the way to do it.
Dr. Dangleben is asking about healthcare. What is your view on the state of healthcare in Dominica? And do we have room to grow?
Too many people have had to die. People I know, those I don't. Too many people have had to die in our healthcare facilities here in Dominica, and it is simply not good enough. Our healthcare system is not good enough. It is below what it was even in 1980. I mean, 40 years later, we are worse off in terms of our health system than we were 40 years ago, and that is simply not good enough. And the failure again of this government to address the health issue. And again, if we're going to encourage our diasporans to come back and to be a part of development in Dominica, having a premier health system must be key to them coming back, because most of them are going to come back when they're retired or close to retirement, and they require that level of care and health care. So, I'm very disappointed as to where we are, the inability to even get drugs, the inability to, and just the functioning. I spoke to someone just this morning, and they were saying that a young lady was denied an operation because the lab was closed for 2 days or something, and they could not test the blood that she needed. I'm like, how many it was closed? So you have, just in terms of the daily functioning of the hospital, the availability of drugs, the availability of being able to do the kind of operations that you need. And again, part of the involvement of the diaspora could very well involve our doctors overseas being able to be open for consultation, that they can assist with what is going on there. I'm sure that some system can be worked out whereby you were able to get that level of support, because we have a number, including Dr. Dangleben himself, a number of skilled medical professionals in the United States, in the UK. One of the kids that I taught at SMA, he's a brain surgeon in the UK. So we have all of these that we can tap into. And there's no reason why we should be suffering the way that we are in Dominica. But again, it takes a commitment of it takes a commitment of government to sustain it. You also have to look at the issue of insurance. That's one of the things that we must look at introducing,
as in health insurance.
A health insurance scheme that will allow everyone to have access when the need arises. So that is something that we need to work out. I've been studying the one that they have in Antigua. I think it might be a good model to build off on. But that is something, again, we certainly will engage our medical persons to help guide us. But I'm thinking that you need some type of insurance scheme that will allow persons to, and then in that case, we'll be able to pay for it, so that we'll be able to maintain a certain level. And that's what it takes. It takes a certain level of maintenance of the health system, and it usually comes from an insurance process. And so that's another key area that we have to look at and we have to develop.
Somebody's asking, in your travels, have you sourced out any fruit trees that would grow in Dominica?
Any fruit trees? Not specifically. I'm not, because we have. I'm of the view that anything can grow here. So it's a question, anything. So it's a question of, once we've identified what we want to do, where we want to go, then we can actually do that. Yeah. But I've seen some, they're growing there. For example, the jackfruit is one example that comes to mind. That is something that we can probably do a lot more here of. It's a very widely used fruit. in the United States, for example, very widely used, and probably something that we can do in Dominica. Yeah, and I'm sure there are others like it, but it's something that once we start to look specifically at what we need to grow, then we'll be able to bring those into play.
I had a question about reconciliation. You know, that idea, because I'm a healer by profession. And I understood what you were talking about when you said that the people of South Sudan, it took them a little longer, maybe, than the stated goal initially, because people were healing from the hurt, from the pain. Where do you see us on that scale? You know, it just feels like we're quite fractured. And I would say, even within I say the United Workers' Party, many have said that your party is too fractured. Maybe they don't see you all out together enough, or, you know, things like that. What would you say about that idea?
So Dominica is deeply fragmented. I'm going to deal it both with the country as a whole and even within our own party. Dominica is deeply fragmented, and what we've done successfully in Dominica is, while the colonists removed our barriers in terms of our language and our tribe from us as a start, so that we were devoid of tribal affiliations, we have now substituted our politics as our tribe. So we have a green tribe in Dominica, we have a blue tribe, we have a red tribe, right? Because that's how people view themselves. I talk to people in my constituency all the time, and they will say, you know, I'm a Labourite. I'm a Labour. I don't even know I'm a Labourite, but I can vote for you. I will vote for you, but I'm a Labourite.
Yeah.
They've given themselves this
A new
you know,
identity.
this identity
Yeah.
of being a Labourite or UWPite and so on. And that to me is extremely disastrous, because you're not looking, when I look at you, I don't see you as a fellow Dominican. I view you as being from the other party. And so all of my thinking around that is, if government does something and it is my government in office, it is my government, so you should not benefit from it.
Right.
So if the government is giving harm, you don't hear, for example, many Labourites saying, well, I don't want the harm. If you're not going to give my neighbor, I don't want it. I don't hear many people say that, right? That would be a good start. Say, I would only accept it if everybody is dealt equally. But because people see themselves as that in that particular mold, then it is fine. It is okay to give me because you're my government and exclude my neighbor who is from another tribe. So that to me is very, very difficult, and it translates as well even to attitudes at work,
right,
on the job and so on, in terms of promotion. People are now understanding that if they need to be promoted, they have to show allegiance to a party. So you hear, for example, of some, I'm not going to call names, but you have individuals who are suddenly promoted. And the first thing they'll tell you, by that person turned, they probably were supporting, say, workers at one point, but then they understand that for them to make it in their own career, that they have to turn, they have to show allegiance. That destroys the country. Because at the end of the day, you're going to get a lot of square pegs in round holes. You're going to find a lot of misplaced persons who are there not because they're necessarily qualified or out of merit, but because they have allegiance. So that to me is very, very destructive. Then on a more personal level, in terms of within the party, sometimes it's just a matter of egos. People have their own egos. People have different motivations as to why they do certain things. Why, for example, would somebody not want all of us to succeed? If we succeed at this, Dominica succeeds. But to some people, it's about, if I'm not the one doing it, then it's not going to happen. And to me, that's extremely selfish. And those types of attitudes we absolutely have to erase. We need to erase those attitudes, because we develop a country when we work together. It's like a tug of war. If you ever seen a tug of war, the team that wins is the team that is better able to pool their strengths together, to work in unison.
Hold your strain. As
Yes.
kids used to play in elementary school. Hold
Yes.
your strain. Yes.
Absolutely. We need to hold on straight, but together. That to me is critical. Absolutely
Yeah.
critical.
So, as you say that, you had a very, for me, in my opinion, bright Dominican, fresh, exciting, passionate, energetic Dominican come up and present himself in your party, Senator Delbert Paris. What are your expectations and hopes as far as working with Senator Paris?
Well, absolutely. I'm looking forward to working with the senator, Senator Paris. I'm absolutely delighted to have him on board. I believe that, he has a certain skill set that he brings with him. In fact, when we did the economic conference, I reached out to him to be one of our presenters, to be one of our thinkers in
Mm-hmm.
that setting.
Mm-hmm.
I understood that he brought some good thinking, even in the area of the construction industry, but even beyond that, how
Mm-hmm.
to develop the country in a
Right.
sustainable way. So I am really anxious to be working with him, and anxiously looking forward to work with him and to have him as part of our team. I think he's a great addition
Mm-hmm.
to the team and will bring a lot to the table. It's great. It's great, and we want to see more of those, because at the end of the day, it has to be a unified effort. It has to be everybody working together, everybody holding string,
Right. Right.
and that is how it's going. That's how it's going to be. So yeah, I'm very delighted to have him with us and to be working with him.
Okay, I appreciate that response because I listened to him think out loud on the spot, and I appreciate the way he thinks. I appreciate the way he analyzes a problem to come to a solution.
Mm,
So I think Dominica, I mean, it's, we're only gifting ourselves. We're only gifting ourselves if we make use of our brightest and our best.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yes, yes. Also, to say that I appreciate that collaboration. I'm reiterating. I appreciate that collaboration I saw between you and Attorney Francis and Mr. Ito of the Freedom Party. I'm a little YFM. Talk about identity.
Uh-huh.
Talk about identity politics. I'm just a little YFM girl from Cottage looking for a place to serve Dominica. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I appreciate that. I'm also going to say that I was looking for a team unity representative to be on there. Maybe you're a fantastic negotiator. I'm going to put it out there that in the spirit of all of this holding strain together, that we utilize all of our Dominicans who are presenting themselves for
Yeah, I'm with you. In
future
fact,
preparation.
the first thing I did, because when Matt first talked to me about it, it was
Mm-hmm.
everybody. When I
Mm-hmm.
saw the flyer, it was missing
Yes.
Todd. I immediately reached out to him and said,
Mm-hmm.
Matt, why is Todd not? You should call. Make sure you call them to have them. And then he
Mm-hmm.
said he would try to get them, and he never did. I even spoke to Alex Bruno about it,
Mm-hmm.
because, like you, I believe that if you're going to be inclusive, it has to be all inclusive. We cannot be selective.
I
All right,
agree.
and yeah, so it did not happen this time, but I'm hopeful that in the future it will. Yeah, but
Okay.
it was not for lack of try, and I did reach out to Matt on that specifically.
Okay.
Yeah.
That made me feel better.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So I'm so grateful to you for your time and your generosity, really, in sharing your thoughts and your experiences today. I appreciate your intention for Dominica. I appreciate your willingness and your wanting to share everything you've acquired over the course of your life and work with Dominica in that kind of way. So, these are my thoughts. What do you want to leave us with? What message do you want to convey to Dominicans as we look towards the future? Why should they support you? Why should we support you? Because, with a lot of other, you know, groups, and why not continue to vote for the Labour Party? I mean, they've been there for 20 something years. One could say, well, they have a plan. I don't know. Why not them and why for you? Why vote for you?
Yeah. So what I offer the Dominican public is a lot of hope, but hope that is grounded in reality.
Mm,
Hope for better Dominica, hope for revamping our sectors of growth,
mm-hmm,
hope for putting the young people to work, hope for transforming the economic landscape of this country, hope
mm-hmm.
for wealth creation. And that is something we did not get a chance to speak much about, but that is something that I'm big into, helping young people
You can
create
talk
wealth.
about. You can talk. You have time. You can talk about that.
Yeah.
Talk about.
Yeah, yes,
Oh,
because one of the things, I mean, my specialty is in financial and international economics. So I
mm,
understand the way markets work and how wealth is created in the United States. I
mm,
mean, people in the United States make money mainly through one of the major ways is through investments in the stock market. I mean,
mhm.
that is how you really earn a lot of money. Yeah, you make money through businesses, but an even larger number make money through either the stock market or the currency markets. So there are opportunities there as well for young people uh,
Mm,
to make, not only young people but also to make good money. And I have kind of led the way in that sense. I have put together a group of some 17 investors, if you like, young professionals that
mhm.
are investing in the stock market. And we are building a nice nest egg, as it were, for the
Okay.
future. So
Mhm,
that is something that I believe that more people can be exposed to.
mhm,
And it does not take a whole lot of money necessarily, but
mhm.
if you combine, so if you can put, say, if you can put 5,000, but you have
Right.
20 people who can put $250,
Mhm, mhm.
then you have your 5,000, right? So, there are ways in which it can be done. And that is something that I would like to see a lot more of,
Mm,
um, in terms of people allowing their monies to work for them. I mean, you can put
right.
your money into a bank, and
Mhm.
if you're lucky, you will get probably 2.5%, 3%,
Right.
right? Now, at 3%, it will take you 14 years, all right, to double your investment.
Mhm.
Because there's a rule called the rule of 72. If you want to know how quickly something doubles, you take 72 and
Mhm.
divide it by the rate of growth.
Mm,
So if your savings is growing by 3% every year,
mhm.
then 72 over 3, right? That is
Right.
what that is what will give you that's 24. That's 24%.
Mhm.
So 24 years, sorry. 20, it will take you 24 years.
To
So
double
if
your money.
you invest ten
That
thousand
rate.
dollars now at that
Mm.
rate, it will take you 24 years for you to get an extra $10,000. That's a
Wow.
long time to wait to
Yeah.
just make $10,000.
But the
Whereas you
stock
can
market
put this
is kind
$10,000 into the stock
of,
market,
yeah.
and if you just get the average growth of the stock market between 20 and
Mhm.
30% a year,
Mhm.
then at 20% in 3 years, you can double that amount. All right. So those types of things, like, and I suspect we are not in Dominica necessarily open to that, but that is something I'm willing to actually engage a lot more people in, probably even have some classes, and just open people's eyes,
I think
to
that's
what the
excellent. That's
opportunities
perfect.
are, to gain wealth and to make wealth. Because let me tell you something, there is nothing as miserable as not being able to have something, or to have some resources to take care
Mm,
of. I
mm,
remember when should I even say that, when we were in school, and probably not having the money to buy recess, and they would just look at the boys whose parents were well off, who will
mhm.
give them money, and then you had to be mopping, like a piece of bakes. And I won't tell
Mopping.
you what one guy did to me.
Oh,
That was
no.
just terrible. uh, but
No.
nothing. I mean, that pain that you feel, that you can't put your hand into your pocket, and
Mhm.
especially for parents that they cannot, when their kids need something and they cannot, you know, they cannot even. I learned, for example, that the the tuition fees for state college
Mhm.
is $200 a semester, and
Mm.
there are people who cannot afford.
Not do it.
There are parents who cannot pay $200 for the kids to go to State College.
At
You
two.
know, so that is where we are in Dominica, and you know, but there are ways that you can actually go
For sure.
around that and circumvent all of that, and so yeah, that's another key area
Well,
I
how
would
can
like
they
to.
connect with you if they want to learn more?
Yeah, well, I'm on Facebook. It's probably the easiest way is on Facebook, and yeah, people can.
Mhm.
I'm under my name there on Facebook, and it's very easy to reach me that way. Just send me
Okay.
a text, and we can be in touch. Yeah,
You
absolutely.
also are a published author, and you've got the book called The Maroons of Dominica.
Yes, that's correct. That's one of my really outstanding achievements, I would say, if I could put it as such,
Mm-hmm.
to be able to chronicle the
Mm-hmm.
story of our brave ancestors, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and what really triggered all of that was I was listening to a lecture done by that was what's his name again? He used to be the mayor of Roseau, and he was a lecturer in
Mm-hmm.
African studies. Um, Gosh, you know, I forget his name now.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I don't remember his name, but I was listening. I was listening to one of his lectures, and then he was talking about the Maroons who lived in Grand Fort, who had their headquarters in Grand Fort, and
Mm-hmm.
he talked about the Rosalie estate. And I'd never really heard that, you know, that part of our history,
Mm-hmm.
that the Rosalie estate was attacked by a group of of Maroons
Mm-hmm.
headed by Bala
Mm-hmm.
that killed all of the white managers on that estate
Mm-hmm.
and freed over 180 slaves.
Oh, wow.
You know, and so that was the beginning of my research. I mean, I'd heard about the names Bala, Congori, Jacko, you know, I heard of Jacko Flats and so on, but it was never that close to home because being from
Mm-hmm.
Grand Fort, you know, my great great grands working on the Rosalie estate
Right.
and making that connection. So I was like, okay, that needs to be researched. And then there was very little information. Lennox Holy Church has written a book on the Maroons of Dominica, but I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to come from a different perspective. And then once I started that research, I was surprised at the amount of material there was. So I go online, I access a historical site that has newspapers going back to the 1700s,
Mm-hmm.
and I type in Bala. And I was completely blown out of my mind when I saw the amount of hits that generated. Bala was like the Ben Laden of his day, you know. I mean, in terms of the interest and the, you know, because he was considered to be a terrorist, all right,
Yes.
a
Yes.
bandita. They refer to him as a bandita, you
Oh,
know,
wow.
and a terrorist. But he was fighting a cause, and so that research was so vital. And then when I saw how that profoundly impacted the story of liberation as well. You
Mm-hmm.
know, William Wilberforce was armed
Right.
with stories of what happened in Dominica
Oh,
when he
really?
made his case to the British Parliament. You know, a
Mm-hmm.
Reverend Peter, who was a deacon there in Roseau, was the one who brought him volumes of the treatment of slaves in Dominica and what
Mm-hmm.
they were going through, documented those, and personally hand delivered those to Wilberforce in the United States. That gave him the drive, and he referred in many of his speeches. He referred to what was happening in Dominica and the work of the Maroons of Dominica at that
Mm-hmm.
time, and how all of that was what really ultimately resulted in the British Parliament passing legislation to end the slave trade and to end
Yeah.
and to emancipate our slaves. So, you know, that to me was just fascinating. So I was able to capture that in the book. Do a lot of research as well in the National Archives because you have detailed records
Mm-hmm.
of the governors. You know, almost on a daily basis, they'll be sending back records from Dominica of what was going on in you know
Right.
in the colonies and so on. So being able to put all of that together was one of my crowning achievements. And although I'm not a historian, but
Mm-hmm.
just applying the same research that I would apply a paper I'm doing in economics, I applied the same research and made it very clear I was not a historian. I taught history. I love history, but
Mm-hmm.
you know, I was able to get it, and so a lot of it is referenced material. with newspaper clippings, and that to me was the strongest part of this book, which you will not find in the other books on the Maroons in Dominica, because they will not make use of that facility, because that's a
Right.
very recent addition. It's only recently that came online in terms of being able to archive all of these
Right,
newspapers
right.
going back to the 1700s. Yeah.
But I need to get a copy.
Oh, you still don't have your copy?
I
Ah.
still have my copy, Doc. I still have my copy, Doc.
Yeah, it's a great, and not because I wrote, but I think it's a really a great part because of our history, because it made me, kind of keep my nose even higher to think that
Yeah.
our humble Negmawo had such a profound impact on what
On the
happened in the whole slave debate, and one of I got a quote that is actually on the back of the book, that one of the legislators in the British Parliament said, people talk about the Maroons of Jamaica, but they have nothing on the Maroons of Dominica.
Okay.
The Maroons of Dominica, the Maroons of Jamaica, they surrendered. They signed treaties with the British government, but they said not the Dominican Maroons. They never signed any treaty.
Yes.
He referred to them as being bloodthirsty and murderers and so on, but they never signed. They refused to negotiate with the British
Yeah.
government. They wanted their freedom. They would where possible, free the slaves. And it's just by a quirk, and that's another thing I realized. It's just the entire Dominica would have been freed of slavery if that had succeeded, because Farcel, who was another major Maroon, leader, he arranged for an attack on the Buetica Delices estate.
Okay.
On the southeast part, and the idea was that they would liberate. They would start there on the southeast. They would liberate the plantations there in Delices, and then they would just move across the island. Then from there, they would move. The liberated slaves would join them. They
Pick
would
up
move
people.
across to Rosalie, then to Castle Bruce, and just liberate all of Dominica. And just by a quirk of bad luck, that when they launched the attack, there were two boats in port at the time, two man of war, as they call them at the time, two British things, that they were able to send reinforcements from Roseau using the lake road that goes from Grand Fort, Loda and down to Grand Fort and across to Delices, and that is how they were able to defeat that particular thing. But if that had succeeded, our history would have been different. It would have been liberated, around the time that Haiti got its liberation,
Wow.
or even before that, So we were really ahead in terms of that, and even after a number of Negma were reported to have gone to Haiti, to help, and so that role that we played, a lot of that has been captured, but that is information that was just sitting there, not revealed, not known to the Dominican public. So that, I think, to me, is the real genius of this particular publication, being able to bring out these little nuggets of truth and about the real history of our people and who we are.
Who we are.
And who really are. Who really are.
Great grandfathers were.
Absolutely. I mean, it's fascinating. It's just it's incredibly fascinating. So yeah, I'd encourage all of our listeners to grab a hold. It is available and it is done well. It actually was on the Amazon.com best-selling list for 2 weeks.
Oh, very nice.
When it was initially came out, because such was the response. So far, I've sold close to 1,000 copies.
That's very good.
That people are, and not only Dominicans are buying it, by the way. It is part of the historical part of what it is. So it's been cataloged in the Library of Congress in the United States. It is in practically every country in Europe. It has been, it's there. It's in Books A Million. It's in Barnes and Noble.
Yes.
In all of the major booksellers across the globe. So yeah, it's doing well. Yeah.
They've told me, what do I mean? I don't have a copy of your book. He sent back my Powerball book. Then behave yourself. I'll get it. I'm getting it. I'm getting
Yes, yes.
it. Yeah.
Yes,
Um,
yeah.
thank you so very much. I really appreciate you
It's
spending
been
this
my
time,
pleasure.
yeah, with the people who listen to me, with me talking. Um, I wish you the best. I wish you the highest and the best for Dominica, on Dominica's behalf.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I
Yes.
appreciate it. And I'm just looking forward to the new year as we continue to go around Dominica,
Mm-hmm.
bringing that message of hope on the ground to the people of Dominica. I think it's going to be critical going forward. And so that is number one, the number one priority,
Okay.
to bring this message of hope to the people on the ground. So you'll be seeing a lot. You'll be hearing a lot about me
Oh,
and
very
my
good.
party and all of us on the ground across Dominica in the
Very
year
good.
ahead. Yeah.
Well, thank you guys for joining me for another Sit on the Couch with Dr. Triphi. Thank you all for listening. I appreciate you. N'oubliez pas les l'autre fois. Okay? Peace.
D'accord.
Thank you,
Thank you
Doc.
so much.
Yes.
All right. Sure. Bye bye.
Bye bye.